Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Natalie's coming live on Facebook. Hope I it's everyone. I'm out of breath. Oh my goodness. I hope everyone's having a super dope day. We're live for Bosso Talks. We're usually on Wednesday, but my job want to make me work on Wednesdays. Here you go, Natalie. All right, guys, like and share this feed. Like and share this feed. All right, you want Natalie? There we go. All right, Natalie's on. All right, guys, like and share this feed. Going live with Natalie Martin, the Clarity Coach.
Let's go. We in the building. Okay,
all right, guys. Let me guys see us come on live on. We're normally live
here we go.
on. You got it?
Yeah. I'm like, why can't I see myself like an old lady?
What up, guys? We're live now. Super dope week on today. It's Thursday. Boss Up Talks usually on Wednesdays. Trade switches to Thursday. Thursdays for this current week. So yeah, it's been a really, really interesting week. Just with like getting into the groove of things. As we know, September is pretty busy for both of us, Natalie. So it's just kind of creating new habits, getting rid of old habits, realizing that summer break is over and it's time to get back to the grind of things. Well, I don't know. You be on vacation because you know you got all your kids out back at school, so you got your time back.
Oh my
God. During the year. So yeah, guys, like and share this feed. It's gonna be a super dope live today. We're talking about renewing your mind and the importance of renewing of your mind.
As I fix my camera acting crazy. Oh, I got a new phone. That's why. I'm like, why this phone so big?
Yo, somebody get some coaching money. Somebody start getting clarity coaching.
Birthday money.
All right, guys, like and share this feed. We're talking today about renewing your mind. So that's a super dope topic that we're talking about today. And I just want to read something first. So I'm going to Romans 12, verse 2. Okay. All right. So Romans 12, verse 2. So that's what I'm talking about today. Romans 12, verse 2, which is renewing your mind. All right. Renewing your mind is super, super key. All right. So any success, renewing your mind is so important. All right. So Romans 12, verse 2 says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, perfect will. All right, so just breaking that down, right? So a lot of times it's very easy to conform to society, right? But just because that's what society is saying does not mean that's what you should be doing, right? When you're called, you're set apart. For example, when I first started my business, I was 10 years old. Nobody's thinking about starting a business at 10 years old, right?
I know.
So for me, I already knew I was different from just normal kids, right? I always knew I was different from normal kids. And just knowing that that was not normal, I had to make sure that I knew I was I don't say legal by my own. I knew I was had a different path from other people, right? And the first thing about just really understanding your purpose and your passion and getting clarity is realize that you're called to do some great things, right? But when you're called to do great things, sometimes you're not going to be like everybody else. And when you're not like everybody else, sometimes it seems as though you want to be normal. Like, I just want to be like everybody else. I want to fit in. When a lot of times you're not meant to fit in because you've been called to do great things. So once you realize you've been called to do great things, you now have to start renewing your mind, right? Renewing your mindset. And now when you start renewing, the whole purpose of renewing your mind is to really get clarity, right? Because when you're trying to be like everybody else and you're not fitting in, you start to do things to fit in when honestly it never feels right, right? No matter how long you try to make it right, it's always gonna be something on the inside. You're like, man, this is not for me. This is not where I belong. So it takes time to say, okay, I know this is what I desire. I know this is a burning passion. So how do I get from there to manifesting the results of where I should be? And that all starts with renewing your mind. So renewing your mind. So Natalie, I know this is one of your topics, right? So what do you think the importance of for you of renewing your mind?
So for me, I love how you talk about standing out from the people that were in your environment, and that happened to me too. But then I went into this process where I was uncomfortable even in my own skin, where it was like I knew I was supposed to be somebody else. If that makes sense to anybody, like I knew where I was and I was comfortable where I was, but I was still uncomfortable in myself because I knew there was more. And
Mm.
I could not resolve the fact of where I was a place that other people would have wanted to be. I distinctly remember having a conversation with a friend, and she was like, I don't understand why you feel unfulfilled. You have 5 kids, you have a husband that is in the military. If you wanted to, you wouldn't have to work. What is so unfulfilling? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me why you're going after more. And I couldn't explain to her what it was, but I felt like what God had created me to be, I was still living below that potential, and I had to become somebody else. And so, renewing of my mind really came into the play where I had to start thinking that I was worthy of having the more, because I was already told, like, what you have is just enough. And although
Mm.
it was good, it was just enough for me and my family. I didn't have enough money. If my mom had called and said, "Hey, I want to borrow $50," I didn't have it. Or if my mom said, "Hey, I want to give your brother a 21st birthday party," I didn't have the money to help her give him a 21st birthday party. Like, there were certain things that I could only do for my family, and I couldn't for my immediate family. And there were even times that we were struggling that I couldn't even, outside of myself, do anything for anybody else. It was like just literally just enough. You know how it's 7 of us in our family and we going out to eat, and you just have just enough. You like, I don't want anything extra to happen. I don't want them to raise the price on anything. We have just enough for us to feed us if we go to this particular place at this
Mm.
particular time. That's how I felt. And it's just like God was saying, no, it is selfish for you to think that just enough is just enough. So I had to renew my mind to say that,
Mm.
to think that more was actually a good thing. Acquiring more, desiring more was a good thing, because everybody else at the time was saying the just enough that you have, for me, it would be good. That's what they were telling me. So they didn't
Mm.
understand why I was chasing after the more. So renewing of the mind was just really seeing myself bigger than I saw myself in that moment, and being able to, and giving myself permission to actually go after who I knew I could become, the potential that I saw, instead of just staying in who I was in the moment.
I think that's so good. What you said, and one part that stood out was you have to think you're worth more. And I think the biggest part about renewing your mind, you have to be okay with realizing that what's best for others is not always what's best for you. And sometimes you may have friends and family that, you guys grow up together, but there's a plateau that some of you guys reach, right? So for me, my goal may not be Natalie's goal, but there are certain things that we align with. So for example, his family goal for me is not the same goal as family goal for Natalie, where we don't always connect. But when it comes to coaching, Nat and our goals align. So you have to realize that when it comes to your goal, you have to know for yourself what works for you, right? And I think the biggest part, the hardest part about it too, and especially when it came to, let's say, just simple as just pricing, right? And entrepreneurship, sometimes pricing could be very, very difficult, being so, because you don't want to be too expensive, but then you're like, man, will people pay? Do people think I am worth that? And what happens, I had to get to the point where if I know I'm worth it, everybody else will see my worth. And sometimes we look for validation in so many other people besides ourselves, that we wait for other people to acknowledge us versus acknowledge the good that's in us already. As the scripture talks about, every good and perfect thing comes from God, right? So when you think about that, every good and perfect thing from God is already inside of me, right? So the only validation I need is what already God has put inside of me, which is the validation to say I can do exceedingly abundantly above all that I can ask or name, because that's what He said to me. So when you start to really analyze who you are by renewing your mind, like, I think that one of the biggest things, I think Natalie and I, we were in the same church at one point, and renewing your mind was a big topic that Pastor Joe started to preach about for a minute. Like, she was on that thing about renewing your mind, speaking those things that be not as though they were. Like, we were really kind of engulfed in that. And the important part about that was, when you come from not knowing this to knowing it, it's like everything starts to change, because you can't deny that you didn't see it, because it's right in front of you in the word. So you know that, yes, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Yes, I can have what I say I can have. I can do what it says I can do. Like, once you start to like recite those stuff, that's how you start to renew your mind. Like, once you start to make a confession of your faith, confession of your belief, renewing your mind becomes easy because now it's not something that I am making up in my head. It's something that was already laid out before the foundation of the earth, that I knew that all of these things that belong to me are mine, but I have to just renew my mind to know that I am worthy to receive those things. And I think that was very hard for me at one point until I started to change my surroundings, right? Where before, like I always not gonna believe big, but sometimes there are people who you have in your corner who does not believe big, and they try to make it seem like, oh, that you doing too much. Maybe you're doing too little. So you have to really protect your mindset and really grow in your mindset. Last time we talked about the winning mindset. In order to get to the winning mindset, you have to take time to renew your mind. Because if you want to stay basic, be basic, but that might not be for me. And I'm aware of that. And because I always want more, I'm always going to do the most to get what I need to get done. I don't even care what other people got to say about that. I know what God has called me to do, which means that I have to be okay with being different. I have to be okay with realizing that, listen, my journey is not your journey. But when I start to renew my mind, focus on my own journey, and I renew my mind. I focus on my journey, renew my mind, focus on my journey, renew my mind, focus on my journey. Nothing else matters because I've already taken time to focus on what God has called me to do. And when I stay focused and seasoned, I'll never be out of season. Right? There are a lot of times when there are always open doors, right? Open doors are always around us, open doors, open windows, but sometimes we are afraid to walk through it. We're afraid to actually go through them, or we're afraid to receive. It's a fact of worth. Like, I think the biggest thing, like Creflo preached a sermon when I was probably like 13, no, probably like 15. And the sermon was about nothing else matters because God loved me. And he said, stop praying all this stuff until you know God loved you. Because once you start, things become easier to receive when you know you deserve it and you're worthy and you're loved. And once you start to meditate on those things, it becomes so much easier. So the first step to feeling worthy is to start really renewing your mind to say, hey, I do deserve this. Hey, I do deserve wealth. I do deserve abundance. I do deserve to be healthy. I do deserve love. I do, like, whatever you feel like you deserve it. And that's the easy way, but it starts by renewing your mind.
That's so good. It definitely starts by renewing your mind. And what we don't realize is, especially as Christians, there are some foundational cultural mindsets that we have been taught in the church that has been passed down from generation to generation. Just as, with slavery, a lot of people understand it when it comes to slavery. They like, oh yeah, I know the mindset of a slave has been passed down from generation to generation, so I have to be the curse breaker. But there are some things that have been passed down through the church that we don't realize, that we have to break those curses that are not biblical, but are just things that people have practiced because of what had happened in the past. For example, I was reading this Bible plan about, why wealth is so important. And it talked about how in the early centuries in England, where the popes and the hierarchy, the people, they were, wealthy, but they were using the wealth in a negative way. They were hoarding the wealth for themselves. People were poor and they were making the poor people give them wealth, and they were abusing their power. And because of that, people looked at wealth as something that was evil. And so being pious and being giving all of your wealth and your riches to the church was considered holy and not, a positive thing. And so that has been passed down from generation to generation within the church, where we see poverty as being holy and pious, as opposed to wealth being something that God designs and really wants us to have. So we have this mindset and we're coming into it and we think it's godly, but it's not. It's just a religious mindset that has been passed on, and it's not a biblical mindset. But once you really get the understanding through the Bible, reading it yourself and understanding it yourself, and that comes with being in community with other people who read the Bible and understand it themselves, and they encourage you to seek this information out on your own. When you see that thing, like you said earlier, Chef Jay, you can never unsee that. You can never unsee that. No matter how much you try to deny it, it will always come back up in your mind like, wealth is really something that God wants me to have. Now, I'm not saying that that's for everybody. There are some people that might feel like God has called them to be, give all their wealth away, like he called that young man to give all his wealth away. But that ain't me. That's not what God called me to do. Because no matter how much I tried to be poor, there was a desire on the inside for millions. And so I had to lean into what God had called me to be and just be who God is calling me to be. And I feel so much more fulfilled walking in this than trying to fight against what he's saying to be poor. Now, back to the once you see a thing, you can't unsee it. So I'm working with my elite client in my Clarity to Execute Academy. And we're having this one-on-one session. And this week, the homework was to look at 3 million and billion-dollar companies. So we looked at Chick-fil-A, we looked at Hobby Lobby, and then we looked at Ramsey Solutions, right? And we looked at their values. And I had them look at their values and compare those 3 companies to their company. And as they were going through the values, the one thing that stood out to them, they said they never compromised on their values. Most of them, all of them said it was to glorify God. Even in Chick-fil-A's statement where it says who we are, it says we are a company, we are a global company, a company that is about legacy, and our goal, our number one desire is to glorify God. It said nothing about chicken. Hobby Lobby, theirs was we want people to have an encounter with God, and we have biblical, everything that we do is based on biblical principles. And then with Ramsey Solutions, they were surprised that their values, they literally took the Bible word for word, and it was in their values. Fear not. It was a scripture. And then they explained why they had fear not. They had another scripture that says, if we serve people, then we won't ever have to worry about money. And they had a scripture. And they were surprised at that. And they said, wow. Now that they've seen, let me tell you, now that they've seen the values, right? They were like, I can't believe these companies actually are living their faith out loud. But then I went behind them and I said, let me tell you how much these companies are worth. Because we don't think that faith-filled companies, people who live their faith out loud, can be worth anything. Chick-fil-A, $11 billion company. Hobby Lobby, $8 billion company. And the newest one, Ramsey Solutions, $200 million company. So now they can't unsee the fact that these companies who are living their faith out loud are billion-dollar companies. They got a confidence that was just out of this world. By the time that we left that session, they were like, Natalie, ain't nobody like us. They were like, ain't nobody like us. Because I think I mentioned something. I was like, hey, I don't have the thing for the next session. I'm going to go pray about it and I'm going to bring it to you. They were like, don't worry about it. God sent you to us. And the reason why you don't have the thing yet is because nobody like us. We have to show up for you to get the next step in the vision. I have to give you the vision. She was like, the vision doesn't come from you, Natalie. You only bring clarity. The vision comes from us. But it was the confidence that they had after seeing someone similar to them living their faith out loud and making money at the same time. They were like, this desire that we have for more didn't come from nowhere. It actually came from God. And now that I am in community with other businesses that are doing the same thing and are making money, nothing is impossible for us. And they left totally different than how they came in. So the thing about renewing your mind, we always limit it, especially for Christians, to the Bible, but sometimes it's also, not sometimes, and it also means you have to get in community with other wealthy people who believe the same thing as you do.
That's so good on so many different levels because it takes you realizing who you are to make better decisions. And I think too is my mom, let's say if I would just be caught doing something, my mom said, you know better than that. That's not how I raised you. That's not what I trained you to do. And a lot of times we have to remind ourselves because sometimes it's easy to get stuck in doing things out of habit. It doesn't make it right. So oftentimes, even to some, like even in class, for example, there's a lot of my students, I know how to cook. And so they may show me something or a process. I'm like, hey, that's not the right way of doing it. Oh, that's how my mom or my grandma did it. But that doesn't mean it's right. It's just the way that they were taught, right? And even to like certain methods, like when I have my Haitian students, they will always do certain things a certain way. And it was cool, but I said, would you like to be more efficient? There are some things that we do that take 2 hours to do that if we really think about the process, we can do it in an hour. But because we're trained to do things only one way, we get stuck like, well, this is how my mom did it, this is how my grandmother did it, so I'm gonna do it that way too. And not realizing that, hey, you guys are doing it the long way. Now, let me show you a shortcut so you can still do it with the same type of accuracy and get it done faster. And I think that's what happens too when you are in a coaching community or when you're in a space where you really want to learn more. You become excited about learning more. Once you're excited about it, it just seemed like you just start getting wisdom from every area because now you've taken time to say, hey, I want to be the best at this area. So I want to renew my mind to be open. And I just want to drop to you guys 3 steps to really start renewing your mind. And the first step is to ask the Lord to guide and direct you. One of the biggest things about getting clarity and renewing your mind and finding your purpose is to ask God, hey, listen, I need you to direct my mind, give me guidance, and to also guard my mind. Because when you're in the process of learning and elevating and growing, you have to guard what you hear, you have to guard what you see, you have to guard what you speak. Because those 3 gates would allow you to really lose sight of what you're trying to do. When I'm working on something, anybody that's not really adding to my space of productivity has to go for that season. It's not saying I'm like through with you, but for right now, I'm working on a project and I know I need everybody around me who is motivating me to, or have that positivity. I need y'all around me because anything else is going to cause my mindset to shift. So when I'm working on something, I ask God to guide my mind, guard my mind, and direct my mind. Okay. The next step 2 is recognize the source of self-focus and self-defeating thoughts, right? So we have 2 different, like it's like the old school, how do we have the devil on one side, the angel on the other side, right? So the devil speaking this in your mind, this one is doing this one. But that's a real thing. Like that reality of what's coming into so what's causing self-thought. So what's calling self-doubt? What's causing have self focused mind? So I have to look at what's speaking into me. What are those thoughts that are going to cause me to have self-defeat? And what are the ones going to cause me to be focused? I have to see what 2 mindsets do I want to operate out of. And when you're really believing stuff, you remember that we said we want God to guard, direct, and guide our mind. When you think about those 3 things, the next thing is you got to recognize the source of where those thoughts are coming from. We have thoughts running through our mind. They said about almost 80,000 thoughts come to us every single day, right? And when you think about those thoughts, I have to realize I have to have like a funnel. Okay, I know this thought's that's not for me to be productive. This thought ain't it. This thought is it. So I have to recognize where it comes from. Some thoughts come from certain TV shows. Some thoughts come from certain music. Some thoughts come from certain conversations. And a lot of times too is before, if I say if I'm having a rough day, I have to trigger what caused that beginning of the rough day. And sometimes it's because I didn't get up and pray. I didn't make up my bed. I didn't prepare myself for the day. I ain't on my clothes because my morning started that out. But what did I do that night before that morning? Did I go to bed late? Did I watch TV too long? Because now I can see how all of those things played a role in me not being successful today. But I have to first identify where those thoughts come from, where that energy comes from. And the third one is replace self-focused thinking with God-focused mindset. So for example, it's the areas that I'm focusing the most. I want to make sure, okay, so where does God fit in that? Where does God fit in my day? And I realize the areas that I'm failing in is because I really haven't taken time to add God into my day. And I know it's not to be churchy, it's not to be super religious, but for me, it's about a relationship because I know, for example, is the Holy Spirit is my partner. Like, yo, fam, what we doing today? And I've learned the more I include God into my day, the more successful it is. Even my classroom, I have to start pray. I start in the morning by praying in my classroom. I need at least a good 2 minutes to play in my classroom because I have to make sure. I don't know what kids did before they got to my classroom. I don't know who told them that they were stupid. I don't know who told them that they were dumb. Like, I don't know what somebody told them. I don't know what happened before they got to my classroom. If they're in a bad mood, I have to make sure that my whole room is protected. Once they come in, they feel welcome, they feel invited, they feel successful, they feel happy. And that's why a lot of times a lot of kids is like their favorite class. It's because it's not me. It's just that God working through me because I make sure my thoughts, ideas, I say, God, first off, going back to the first step, yo, God, guide my mind, direct my mind, and guard it. That's my first thing. Second thing is let me recognize those self-focused and self-defeating thoughts. Where you gotta do is let me replace any thoughts. It's not like that. And then the last thing is, was a few more steps actually. I just skipped the other two. Rest in the truth that you're accepted by Jesus Christ. Like you have to realize that you're accepted. When you feel accepted and you know who your source is, you never worry about what's not going right. I focus on whose I am and who's on my side. Also, too, you want to make sure you repeat those steps daily, 1 through 5. First thing is, once again, ask God to guard, direct, and guide your mind. Second thing is recognize those thoughts because it's a daily thing. Like that's the reality of life is like just because you pass test once, you may get that same test tomorrow. So I got to make sure I practice it again. And the more you start to create these habits of success, life becomes much not easier, but it becomes clearer. And once you get that clarity, like Natalie teaches, once you get that purpose that I talk about, life becomes so much easier to be successful when you repeat these steps daily of renewing your mind.
That is definitely good. And I love that you talked about the thoughts. Sometimes the thoughts are not even your thoughts. And it may sound like a lot of steps, but it really isn't. And as you go through it, like in the beginning, you're going to be like, oh, step 1, step 2, step 3. Chef Jay gave us, multiple steps. But as you begin to operate through the steps, they become easier. Like you said, you're creating a funnel for your mind. And the more you go through the funnel, the easier it becomes for you to go through the funnel each and every time. And you're not thinking about it as steps. This is naturally how you operate. So if you are used to waking up, brushing your teeth, praying, making up your bed, in the beginning, if you're trying to establish that routine, it seems like, 1, 2, 3, 4. But as you go through it day after day, it just becomes part of your habit and your routine. And it no longer feels like a chore to do. This is just who you are. I had an incident with that mind thing last week. So I had like several things that I had to do that morning. 4 things I had to do that morning. And the 4th thing was going to the grocery store to get some stuff that I had to cook for dinner that day. And as I was coming out the grocery store, a thought came through my mind. And it was like 11:30. You're tired. That's what the thought said. You're tired. And then I heard you're tired. And I said, I'm tired. And then I thought about it and I was like, okay. And then I heard the thought again, you are tired. And then I opened up my mouth and I repeated, I am tired. But then I sat in the car and I had to think, I was like, I'm not tired. And then Wisdom to Wealth flashed out. So I have a master class that's coming up called Wisdom to Wealth. So that thought flashed like quickly through my head. And I was like, Wisdom to Wealth, what is that? Why am I thinking about this right now? And then it just dawned on me. It said, this is how the enemy robs us of showing up fully and completely as ourselves by infiltrating thoughts into our mind. But the thought can't do anything unless I take a hold of it and make it my own. So like you said, sometimes these thoughts are coming from different avenues, but because they land in our mind, we take it and say, this is my thought and I'm going to run with it. And I had to take a minute to evaluate because some people are like, how you know it's your thought? How you know it's not? You take a minute to process. I took a minute to sit in my car and actually think, am I tired? I didn't feel tired. My body wasn't tired. But if I had continued to speak, I am tired, I am tired, I am tired, eventually my body would have caught up to my words because that's how words work. Words are so powerful. That's why the enemy uses our mind. Joyce Meyer has a book that says the battlefield is in your mind. And if we can conquer the battlefield in our mind, we'll be able to speak things into existence and then they will follow up. But I had an opportunity when I realized I'm not tired. I said, no, I am not tired. Natalie, and this is how I was talking to myself in the car. Natalie, you're not tired. Just because you did 4 things today doesn't mean that you're tired. It's only 12 o'clock and you don't feel tired. That is not your thought. And I started talking to myself like I was talking to my client because I'm like, the same thing that my client would need, I'm going to have to be that for myself in this moment because I'm not going to let a thought rob me of my energy. And that afternoon, I was supposed to show up on a live and I would have been like, oh, I'm too tired to go live. I'm too tired to sell this. I'm too tired to whatever. And that day I sold somebody purchased my master class. They came into my DM. They purchased my master class. They purchased my book, She is Legend. I'm like, how'd she find out about She's Legend? I don't even advertise that. They followed me on Clubhouse. I'm like, yo, if I did not show up, and I was talking to them that day about that, and I said, if I did not show up, because I had the thought that said, you are tired, and I adopted that thought, I would not have made the sale. I would have not connected to somebody new. I would have not, there was the transformation that was scheduled for that particular person would not have happened because I chose not to be in position because a thought robbed me of where I was supposed to be. So renewing your
That's
mind is
that's
powerful.
that's good. I know a few years ago, and that's a good what you said because I think Oprah or I think Joel Osteen had talked about this years ago about when you are feeling certain ways, welcome that energy in. And the thought was for me when I do feel tired, 'cause sometimes I be tired. I say, hey, I welcome myself. I know I'm tired, but I welcome in my second wind. I know that today was rough, but I welcome the rest of my day to be fully abundant. I know that, some bills are like attacking me, but I thank God that wealth is attracted to me and is looking for me today. It's nothing wrong with acknowledging what it is, but what do you want to welcome in? And I think that a lot of times, too, especially not with faith, we try to discredit what the reality is. The reality is the reality, but it doesn't mean I can't change it. So for example, is today, I'm like, hey, I know some bills are coming left and right, but I think you blessings are coming from left, right, up, down, all around. So I have to start acknowledging what I want to see. So with renewing your mind, you want to make sure you start doing that daily, making it a daily habit. And if it seems like life is attacking you, say, hey, you know what? Even though life is attacking me now, I welcome in the victories. Like it's all about your perspective. Start changing your perspective. Start worrying about how you react to what you're really coming to. It's all about your reactions, about your words. So if you feel like life is coming at you strong, say, hey, listen, I know today was rough, but guess what? It's 4 more hours of this day, so I'm gonna celebrate the good things, and that's what we just want to focus on. Part of bossing up, building opportunities, strategically and successfully, is about changing your mindset. It's about renewing your mindset. These talks are just pep talks about really helping each other come together to build a strong community. So we're gonna wrap this up. Because we're on later than we normally are. So if you're looking for clarity coaching, hit Natalie up. If you're looking for purpose coaching, hit me up. Let's talk. Let's help you grow. Let's help you pivot. Because listen, closed mouths don't get fed. So if you know you need to go to the next level in your life, you want to reach out because it's time to renew your mind and expect greater things. The more you expect it, the more you start to receive it. But it starts with renewing your mind first, guys. So have a super dope week. We will see you guys